Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back. My name's Devin Durbin. This is the Durbin Compound. So in my shop tour video, if you haven't seen it already, you can click on the link up here in the right hand corner. So during my shop tour video, what I did, I went around the entire shop and showed everybody, the setup and how I had everything going. One of the things that was highlighted to a lot of people and they wanted to know more about, and I mentioned briefly in that video about my Camelback drill press. So this drill press is a W.F.&J. Barnes Camelback design. The patent on this thing was November 12th, 1885. So this thing is well over 100 years old. This thing came to me a couple years ago. I found it on Craigslist. I think I paid $50 for it. It was completely taken apart. It was all messed up, and I had to do the research and try to figure out how it went back together. But I pretty much have it up and running now. Repainted it red because I didn't know what the original color was. I couldn't find any period-specific stuff about it, so there was literally no information on it. I've seen a picture of one that is like this, and that's the only reason I know that information is because the other picture, the guy had done his research and been able to find that. I can't find this in any magazine or brochure from that era. I have no idea where it's even from. I know that this one was made in Rockford, Illinois. Who knows how it got here to this spot? Who knows the story behind it? These drill presses are really cool. Supposed to be old machinery drill presses. So I was going to take you guys around it, show you some of the features on it and why I like it and why I decided to make it a corner piece in my shop. So this thing was, back in its day, was ran off an old leather belt. So they had a master belt in the factory, and then a belt came down to each machine. So the crazy thing about this thing is it runs on a leather belt. Usually everybody who took them off of the line and wanted to use them outside of the factory fitted them with an electric motor. So this one is fitted with an electric motor on it. It's a 1915 patent on that. I actually tore apart the entire electric motor. It was kind of scary because it's so old. Being from 1915, it was caked with grease and all this stuff. I cleaned it up quite a bit, but I didn't clean it up as much as I really wanted to because I didn't want it to not run when I put it back together. But all is well, and I got that together. So one unique thing about these old machines is all of the bearings on this are Babbitt bearings. So they're basically a solder aluminum alloy that you melt down into the cavity. So they have a hole at the top. You put two caps on each end of where you're going to make this bearing, center the shaft in it, and then you literally pour molten solder, that aluminum alloy, down in through around the bearing. And then you have to put in its own oil channel. So you're making your own oil galley with a chisel or something like that. That's how they did it back in the day. It holds up. I mean, I'm pretty sure that these are original Babbitt bearings on this. I've rebuilt the back one. I re-poured my own bearing. I wish I would have done a video on that because that would have been pretty cool. But this is already quite niche enough. Like this is, there's not a lot of videos about these drill presses on YouTube, so this is already niche enough for me. So let me turn this thing. This thing weighs about 500 pounds. I want you to be able to see the side profile of it. So let's go ahead and turn this around. So it weighs about 500 pounds. This thing is not light in the slightest. It's all cast iron. The thing that sucks with cast iron is when you're trying to beat on it and stuff. I've broken a couple pieces on this while I was trying to restore it. So I had to weld cast iron back together. It's real brittle. So if you have to heat it, you have to weld it while it's hot. It's all kinds of crazy. But as you can see, this leather belt goes all the way down to the floor where we have our electric motor. So I want to turn the camera. I know you can't see it all in the view. So we'll look at exactly how it's geared, how the electric motor sits on the back of it. It was basically retrofitted with the electric motor on it. So the bracket and all that stuff on the back is added on. They just drilled holes and made an angle iron bracket for it. But overall, pretty cool, pretty easy to operate. This thing is bare bones, exactly what you need for a drill press. So let me show you guys the motor on this thing. All right, so moving down to the motor on this thing. So this thing was basically just retrofitted with this bracket on the back end here. Runs on a leather belt to this main assembly, which is basically your gears and having your different lengths of where the belt is. So smaller gear on this side, bigger gear on the top side, whatever it might be. All I did was when I took apart the engine, I just wired up a nice extension cord that I got from Lowe's and wired it up to a switch. So if everything's clear, which it looks like it is, go ahead and I'll show you kicking it on. So this electric motor is from 1915. All of the bearings are basically they're dry bearings, and you have to keep it lubricated. So these little flaps on the thing here hold basically steel wool, and that steel wool around the bearing keeps that oil in there. So you basically have one fill hole for the bottom of the bearing and one fill hole for the top of the bearing. You squeeze oil in there, and it's designed to just drip as it runs. So yeah, runs awesome for a motor that's over 100 years old. Very cool. I disassembled the whole thing and painted it, so I was worried about it coming back to life, but it turned out that it did pretty well, so can't complain about that. Alright, so since I can't have up and down vertical in my wide angle lens, it kind of stinks because I have to do this in little sections. So I can show you the bottom of it, show you the top, and then in the middle while we're here. So this table is completely movable. It just spins around the shaft. I'm still trying to come up with a way to keep this chuck spring loaded up, but for the most part, I can't find a spring rate that will allow that full 15 inches of travel and still not stretched out. It's got to be a tough spring. It's got to be able to pull the weight of this up and down, but it also has to have the flexibility. So I can't find a spring right. I have to go through Century Spring and source one correctly, but the chuck works just like anything else. This thing is just gravity fed all the way to the bottom, and then I have my vise here on the table. So all I do is come over with my wrench, and then I'll loosen my vise here. I tapped some holes that were already in the table here, and then so I can move my vise around whatever I need to, whatever I'm machining or cutting a hole in. Then I'll just tighten the nut back down, and it works pretty well. So once I get the spring figured out, this thing will be awesome, and I'll be able to do a lot more stuff with it. Alright, so next thing I wanted to show you was how the table goes up and down. So basically just has a release here on the side of the table, just like any other drill press. But what's really cool about it is you have this shaft over here on the other side that you can literally, all you have to do is tighten it up or loosen it, and it will take the table up and down. Pretty cool design. It's a short throw, so it's kind of hard to get it to come up, but for the most part works as advertised. Don't have a lot of qualms with that. Pretty cool. Alright, so show you the top of the machine now. So these bearings in here are designed to run wet. So at all times they have oil dripping from them. You run a lot of grease on your spur gear here, but your belt just comes up from the motor and runs on this guy, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Very simple design. One bar here, one bar for your chuck, and then run off a belt that's on another shaft. So very cool design, called the Camelback design. And I'll fire it up again so you can see the operation here like this. So what's crazy about this electric motor from 1915 is it has a brake on it, which is insane for an air. Or it seems like it has a brake. It definitely kicks down and acts like it has a brake. So maybe it doesn't have a brake, who knows? But it sure does seem like it. But yeah, that's the Camelback drill press. I consider this one pretty much fully restored. I just need to have the other little cover that goes on here, and it's all done and running. So Alright, so now that I've taken you around the drill press, we'll talk about the corner a little bit. I've just put pegboard up in this corner, so I have a lot of options when it comes to what I want to do. Have a tap for my air hose here, so I can just come out with my air hose, blow off my table any shavings that I have going on. Cheap little polyurethane hose from Harbor Freight. I definitely recommend these. These are like $5 and they hold up to just about anything. They say 100 PSI working, or 100 max. I run a lot higher PSI than that on most of the stuff. I'm usually running like 150 or whatever comes out of my compressor. So I have my micrometers, some oil cans for cutting fluid, so while I'm cutting, I can just simply reach over. Screwdrivers and punches and the chuck to unloosen the drill press, a hammer and some glasses and gloves. So that's pretty much all you need for a little machining corner. This isn't a CNC mill or anything crazy, so I don't need any kind of tooling. I'm just literally cutting with drill bits and end mills and stuff like that. So nice little corner for doing that kind of work. I like it a lot. And that's about it. So thanks for watching my video. If you like my content, go ahead and subscribe. This is a very niche subject here that I'll probably put under, I don't know what I'll put it under, but it'll be under one of my playlists. And yeah, so I just figured I'd post it since a lot of people were talking about it and wanted to know more about it since I briefly skimmed over it. So yeah, WF&J Barnes 15-inch drill press made in Rockford, Illinois, patent 1885. So that's 140 years old or something like that. Yeah, almost 140 years old. So crazy, like 137 or something like that if you want to get technical. I don't know. I'll do the math, but not a big deal. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next video.